Hi everyone, how are you? Are you having a good MAGFest thus far? Fantastic. Hi everyone, my name is Javon. I am the department head for MAGES, or the Music and Gaming Education Symposium, which is what this talk is under. I am also a member of the board of directors for all of MAGFest as well. All right, so if you have any complaints about anything, let the other board members know that, not me. But no, I'm really super excited to have the Dr. Billy Tringali here. I ran into him through research. So I was doing some research myself, and then as I was doing that research, I happened to look through one of the citations, because I'm a good scholar. I look at the bibliography, okay? And I saw that one of the papers came from something called the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies. I was like, ain't no fucking way. I was like, there's no way that exists, right? Ain't no way that exists, right? I thought I knew all the geeky stuff, right? And so I immediately looked it up, and then I was just like, all right, cool. And so I just sent a cold email. Hi, my name is Javon. I do these things. I'm a video game researcher, blah, 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 blah. And he responded. And then we had a beautiful, hilarious Zoom conversation.
We had a very long Zoom chat.
It was way longer than I anticipated. And I was like, oh, we're going to have some fun. And so I was like, hey, since you already do Anime Expo type things, why not come down to the East Coast and give a talk at MAGFest. So everyone, please give Dr. Billy Tringali a warm welcome, as this is his first MAGFest with us, okay?
Thank you, Javon. And thank you all so much for having me. I'm really excited. Welcome to the Anime Studies Appetizer Sampler with Billy Tringali. I am the Anime Studies... No, I'm Billy Tringali. Sorry, that's who I am. I am Professor Billy Tringali. I am an academic faculty member at Indiana University, Indianapolis, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies. So I am so excited to talk to all of you today. We have 1 hour, and I have 58 slides. So I'm just gonna be firing it at you. I'm hoping that we'll have time at the end for questions. I'm very chatty and I talk fast. So if you think of anything, you're more than welcome to ask. I am just so excited to be doing this type of work. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, brief introductions. Who am I? I'm Billy Tringali. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies. I am also the founder and academic showrunner for the Jams at AX Academic Symposium. That is an academic conference where we bring in scholars from all around the country and all around the world, and we host a real live peer-reviewed academic conference inside of Anime Expo in Los Angeles for the pure goal of doing public scholarship, which is why I'm here in front of you all. Thanks so much for being involved in public scholarship. I hope this will be fun. I hope you'll learn something. And I am a faculty librarian at Indiana University, Indianapolis, as I mentioned. Javon has been very sweet. He's called me Dr. Tringali. Professor Tringali, I only have my master's in information science. Tragically, I'm not a doctor, but I am, unfortunately, the anime apostle is what I have been dubbed. I won one of the biggest awards in library land from Library Journal, and they assigned me that title. So if you Google me, the AI overview says, Billy Tringali, also known as the anime apostle. Deeply cringe. I didn't give that name to myself. But it is a title that has been hoisted upon me, so I do like to bring it up. So what's on our menu for today? We're gonna go over anime and its importance. I'm gonna go over a couple of, I think, really fascinating real-world examples of the power of anime and its real-life effects on our world. We're gonna talk about the research that I do about research. I am the editor-in-chief, and so I am really interested in what resources are frequently recommended for anime and manga studies, and so we're going to talk about those resources, a couple of books, a couple of journals. If you're interested in digging deeper, I'll have a nice list for you. We're also going to go over 2 fun, interesting case studies from my own personal research. We're going to talk about anime conventions, lessons from lockdown. This is a 1,400-person survey that went out during the COVID shutdowns and how that relates to anime and manga. And then we're going to go over the actual real-life data of the most statistically typical anime vampire, and that comes from the Japanese Visual Media Graph dataset, which I will talk about. So why anime? What's up with anime? This is Dr. Emily Wagner. She was our keynote speaker last year at the Jams at AX Symposium, and it is my favorite photo of all time. So anime, who is she? Who is Mrs. Anime? Have we ever heard of her? Have we ever met her before? So Susan Napier defines anime as anime is a distinct culturally rich art form from Japan. So anime is, of course, commonly defined as animated media from Japan, but scholars like Stevie Swan have argued that anime has evolved to become something more global. These debates continue to exist and I think are really fascinating. And so, however, as we're moving forward into the streaming age, something like Netflix's Castlevania is cataloged by Netflix as anime and is often considered at larger anime conventions to be anime, even though it is a fully global product. It does not originate solely from Japan. So you might say, Billy, which of these descriptions do you subscribe to? And I would say, yeah. So I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's all up to everybody. But most importantly is that anime is booming in popularity. 42% of Gen Z watch anime weekly. Publishers Weekly notes that anime sales have more than quadrupled since 2020. So anime is really one of the only things keeping the children's book market afloat right now, which is fascinating. Unit sales of manga were 351% higher in 2023 than they were in 2019. So we have this enormous boom in anime that I am really, really excited about. More Gen Z actually watch anime than football. So now, whenever you see a football player, you can push them into a locker and say, "Watch Naruto, you nerd! Get out!" But I do think these are such interesting trends to see. Anime felt like it was such an underground medium when I was growing up, founding my own high school anime club, and now it seems like everybody and their mother knows and watches anime. So there are some really notable real-world effects of anime. So in 2011, the student protests that happened in Santiago, Chile, students were encouraged to contribute their spirit energy in order to battle for guaranteed access to quality education. Protesters passed around an enormous spirit ball, infusing it with spirit energy and pushing it toward the ongoing struggle, of course, in the same way that Goku gets energy. And what was fascinating about these protests is that Goku himself came. Goku's voice actor supported the protesters and recorded a line as Goku where he said, "Listen to me, everyone, it's me, Goku." A strange force is putting education, the life of Chile's environment, in danger. I want to request a bit of energy from each of you so that every young person in this country can be guaranteed access to free quality education, and all you have to do is lift your hands. And so they passed this giant spirit ball that they made while Goku's literal Latin American voice actor read this line live in person. Which is so fascinating. And I'll have a full, complete list of the papers that I'm talking about right at the end if you want to read them yourselves. This is a really, really fascinating one. Additional real life continued. So anime imagery was used very frequently in the 2019 Hong Kong student protests. Two examples are Sailor Moon. So we have Sailor Moon in a gas mask, all decked up in Sailor Moon style, because protesters were being hit with rubber bullets and gas and all these sorts of things. And then we have another image of Sailor Moon defending children against the riot police that were trying to remove all of the protesters that were there. More frequently, a lot of people showed up as Doraemon. So people showed up in the same way that we're seeing in current protests of the frogs out in Seattle, which is very exciting. People were dressing up as anime characters and attending the protests themselves. We even had representations of the characters being there and supporting the students. And the yellow umbrella was a huge thing that was used because you were allowed to carry an umbrella in the streets because it might rain, but it's also a great way to deflect canisters. And so there were a ton of characters that were shown with these umbrellas. And we can see that here as well. So we have Totoro there on the side with his huge umbrella defending the children and the young people that are protesting for their right to vote. We have Luffy from One Piece, whose rubber body is deflecting the rubber bullets that were being fired at the protesters. We have art meant to mimic Luffy being gifted his hat, and so the protesters are giving hard hats to the younger people. And then we have something that was shared amongst protesters just to help identify, hey, be sure to wear a mask, be sure to have a gas mask, bring all of these things. And what was really interesting is that once the protesters were using this, the Hong Kong police force started to do something very similar. So Hong Kong has Little Grape, and he is their police mascot, and Little Grape is there to inform mostly elderly people about internet scams. And so what they did was they dressed Little Grape as Tanjiro, and they posted him to their social media pages. It's actually still up. It's ages and ages ago now, but you can find a very cool Anime News Network article about this. Was Little Grape is there dressed as battling, the protesters who were described as demons by the police. They were roasted very heavily online for this by the Hong Kong, and they did not post any more images of Little Grape cosplaying as various protagonists. But beyond this, anime also exists in a lot of ways as a pilgrimage. So a lot of people, who here has ever been to Japan before, if you're an anime fan? Did you go because you like anime? Was that the first thing that inspired you to see the world outside? For those of you that like anime and haven't been to Japan, do you want to go? Yes, everybody wants to go. Anime is this extremely real world piece, and I want you to know you are statistically very average in that regard as an anime fan. Research presented by Kong Wan at the annual Macadamia conference noted that the anime Run with the Wind, which is a running anime, which is about all of these high school students that are competing in the biggest marathon race in Tokyo. So they all train and they come together and they're brothers in arms. It's very sports anime. And they're like, we're all gonna race together. And so many fans in China arrived that a fan interrupted the race itself, because he was so excited to be in the race and show all of his anime friends online, look, I'm here where our friends do the race, and officials had to escort him back to the side. And he was very heavily roasted online for doing so. They're like, embarrassing, don't do that. But now it's seen as much more of a tourist attraction, and the race organizers are aware, oh, there are people that are coming to this, not to see any runners in particular, but because their fictional anime friends ran in this race. And so I would like to see how it happened. This is actually a key part, or developing into a very key part of Japanese rural economy. So researcher Ed Hoff, who is a professor at, I can't remember the name of it, but it is the #1 firefighter academy in Japan. So if you are a firefighter and you want to go back to school, I've got a school for you. It's very much. And so Ed's discussions were on the opening of cosplay photo studios. So anime like Golden Kamui will have the characters from Golden Kamui at various locations up in Hokkaido or up in other locations. You might have seen this if you're a fan of Yuri on Ice. They have, outside of Nichijou Castle, they have big photos of Yuri out there with Maki-chan the dog that you can take photos with. And so a lot of rural Japanese economies are trying to bounce back by luring anime fans out of the cities, saying, if you like Demon Slayer, this is what it would be like to take a photo inside of Demon Slayer. Please come out to the countryside. We would love to bring you to our photo studios. We would love to take pictures of you, and then please stay here, eat our food, drink our drinks. We've heard a lot about over-tourism in Japan, and those are mostly within hyper-populated areas. And a lot of that bucks that's been coming in has not been diversified into the countryside. So one way that they are really pitching this is, if you're coming to Japan for anime and you want to have an authentic anime experience, come to the Japanese countryside dressed as these characters, and you can relive this moment. Additional pilgrimages. So research by Timo Tellen argues that Japanese fans of Attack on Titan are traveling to the German town of Nordlingen because of its connection or lack of connection to Attack on Titan. So here we have Wall Maria right here. We have the whole city in Attack on Titan. And here we have the German town itself built inside of a meteor crater. And so what they did was they built a huge wall around this meteor crater, and it happens to look similar enough to this town that there is documented evidence by this German researcher of Japanese fans of Attack on Titan coming out to this town solely because this is where Attack on Titan took place, even though Attack on Titan takes place in a fully fictional world. And you might be thinking, what a stretch, but when I Googled Nordlingen, the town, this is the first result that came up. And I was like, am I being ridiculous here? And then it's like, real life Attack on Titan? I'm like, Timo, my brother, you've done it. Here, you've proven your thesis over and over again. And as we move from this, we have anime as literal pilgrim. Are people familiar with Luce? Have you heard of Luce? Yes, our wonderful Catholic anime baby. So the Catholic Church introduced anime mascots Luce and Friends for the 2025 Catholic Jubilee. So this was a literal pilgrim who was going across the world spreading the word of Jesus Christ. And she represented the Holy See at the Lucha Comics and Games convention in Italy. This was the first time, I get to say this sentence, this was the first time that the Catholic Church attended an anime convention. Which, hey, pretty cool. Very interesting and fun. And in a much more fascinating way, this is not the first time that the Catholic Church has attempted to utilize anime imagery in order to get people, young people especially, more involved in the church. The website is fully dead now, but you can find an old Catholic news article in regard to manga saints. And so there were 4 saints that they chose to kind of represent the Catholic Church, and they drew all of them anime style. The only things that we have record of is there was one who was Joan of Arc, so anime girl, Joan of Arc, classic, great, I'm so interested. And it did not work, and it was not successful, but they're trying again with Luce, and Luce has been featured in a number of cosplays, a number of TikTok videos, and it has overall been very, very successful. Additionally, the FBI and the CIA attempted to recruit at Anime NYC 2 years ago, and they had the military encouraged people to try to do as many pull-ups as Tanjiro could. And so they had a big picture of him on the pull-up bar attempting, and so you can come over and join the military just like your favorite anime character would. Maybe, probably not. So when it comes to the academic side of anime, there are 2 major academic journals that publish on anime and manga. There is Macademia. Macademia is a purely arts and culture journal, so they only publish works as they relate to arts and culture. Macademia was founded in 2006, which is really, really exciting to see. And also, sometimes I have students come in that are younger than Macademia, and that feels crazy. That feels crazy. And that was founded by Frenchie Lenning. They have an anime, they have an annual conference that hosted international every year that just restarted last year, which was really, really exciting. Macademia ran for a number of years and then hit a pause in 2020 and then has come back hit a pause in 2015 and then came back in 2019, and now it's returned as an academic conference in 2025. So this year in 2026, they will be in Singapore, speaking at the National University of Singapore. Every other year they are in Kyoto. And then there's the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies. There's JAMS, which is my baby. JAMS is a 100% interdisciplinary journal, meaning that anyone from any background can submit to JAMS. It doesn't have to be solely arts and culture focused. We've published everything from a military studies paper on that time I got reincarnated as a slime by an actual general from Austria. Fascinating paper. The Kovacic paper, the Hong Kong protest paper, is referenced. That was published through JAMS. We just published our 6th volume this past year in December. And so that is live online right now in a really, really fun and interesting way. JAMS was founded back in 2020. It was my practicum project from when I was a graduate student at University of Illinois. And it is 100% open access. And that means that any of you right now can log onto your phones and read all of JAMS articles totally for free. You can download them, you can share them on your social media, and please do. JAMS is 100% open access, meaning I receive no money from JAMS, meaning no one receives any money for JAMS. And so I'm speaking here at the extreme generosity of Indiana University, Indianapolis, which I am very, very grateful to be here performing this public scholarship for all of you, which is really exciting. JAMS has an annual conference now every year at Anime Expo that started back in 2023 in partnership with Macademia. And then Frenchie Lunning, who is the founder of Macademia and a very, very dear friend of mine at this point, Frenchie said, she's like, I'm 75 and I'm not interested in partnering with you on this. You can do this on your own. And I was like, you have a lot of work to do, and JAMS really needs its own conference. I'm so excited. So now every year there are 2 academic conferences solely dedicated to anime, manga, cosplay, and their fandoms, which is massive and I think really represents just how much of a boom this field has happened. So let's talk about documenting the recommended resources of anime and manga studies, something I hope will be of interest to all of you if you want to go out and learn more about anime on your own. So what is the overview of this project? So the goal of this project was to document the contents of anime studies research guides from academic libraries. So what we do as academic librarians is oftentimes we build massive lists of resources that we recommend based on our own expertise, based on the classes that are being taught at our university, based on the resources that we have access to. And so I wanted to see, what are people recommending on this high academic level? What are people trying to argue about anime? And this is a continuing research project. This is fall semester. It's coming into the spring now. You'll see why. So the current data set is still really raw, but I think it's led to some really interesting insights into anime and manga. So the guiding documentation, I tried to mimic an anime fan that was doing this type of research, so I looked for Anime Lib Guide, Manga Lib's Guide, or Anime Studies Guide. And everything that came up on these lists, I took the top 25 of these guides, and it was specifically only looking for academic resources about anime, not recommended anime from various anime clubs that happen to be at these universities. So, the information collected. I looked for the title of the guide, what was its affiliation, was it attached to a specific library, was it a full guide or just a page on a popular culture guide? So all of these pieces of information were pulled in here. So I also tried to define, how are these resources being given out? Are they being recommended as an online journal, as a database? What does it really mean? And then everything went wrong. So I was trying to figure out how these resources were recommended. Macadamia is listed as an online resource when it's in fact an academic journal, not a website. But do you see, God hates me. And therefore, all of the data was extremely messy, meaning recommendations included best bets or otaku culture. Hey, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? No explanation. So the focus changed and evolved. I thought that guides would have all the similar resources because I'm tragically the anime apostle. I read a lot of anime papers. I'm the editor-in-chief. I thought the things would overlap, and they really did not. So unique data based on location. If you want to see all of the guides of this list, this is a little friendly QR code. It has a map of all of the guides that were taken. The most anime research guides exist in New York. If anyone is from New York, congratulations on your state having the most anime research guides. You should be very proud. And one of these guides came from Canada, which was really, really exciting. So unique data, 64% of the guides were full guides. So they were massive lists solely focused on anime resources, and only about a third of them existed on larger guides like Japanese studies or popular culture. I thought more resources would be just on little pages, but there's a ton of guides out there about anime. Subject tags, most were tagged as Asian studies. This is the highest number, and you can see that's barely over a third. Understand the hell that I went through trying to do this data. Art or arts, Japanese or Japanese studies, literature, 16% of the anime guides were tagged as anime. Low, difficult to find, tough to figure out, and 16% of them had no tags at all, and then finally 12% of the guides were tagged as manga. Now we're going to get into the resources themselves. The number one recommended resource was JSTOR, 52%. That's barely half of the guides, and that is the biggest number that happened to happen in this research. Academic Search Complete and Academic Search Premier were number 2 at 48%. Macadamia, which is wonderful, and the first academic journal that happens to relate to anime, 44%. Image text, you can see a huge drop down to 28. Jams was only recommended about a fourth of the time. Same with Comics Grid, which is another wonderful. And then finally, closing us out, we had the Anime News Network at 20%. And I also wanted to highlight books by Helen McCarthy. Has anyone heard of Helen McCarthy in the crowd? Yes, Helen's a legend. She wrote she's a very, very prolific author in anime studies. And so most or about a third of resources recommended something by Helen. However, usually they recommended the Anime Studies Encyclopedia, which is just an encyclopedia. It's a full list of anime. So if you're looking for a bunch of anime, Helen's got your back. But read her other works if you want something a little more academic and engaging. So I also wanted to see what anime and manga would be recommended by librarians. What does this say about what we view as worthwhile to study in terms of anime? And then that led me to the question, what counts as a recommended resource? Is it a slideshow? Is it a catalog? I'm going to have to jump back in, but let's actually get into the most academic manga that you can possibly engage with. The most academic anime, number one is Fruits Basket. Now that's something, there's a lot of meat on that bone. Let's jump in. Number 2, Cowboy Bebop, the best anime of all time. Yes, extremely, extremely good. Number 3, Full Metal Alchemist. Sensational, exactly. I counted all of them mushed all together. Anytime Full Metal Alchemist is recommended. And then finally, My Neighbor Totoro. You'll also note all of these are at 50%. There were, across all of these guides, more than 900 recommended resources. Over 700 of them only appeared once. It's the Wild West out here for anime and manga studies, which I thought was so interesting. The only research guide that was recommended by other guides was actually a friend of mine's guide, Michiko Ito from University of Kansas. This is a wonderful guide on researching anime in Japanese. If you speak Japanese, this is a really, really good guide to jump into. So Michiko's work is very, very fun. Some key takeaways from this: it's a highly interdisciplinary field. Really reinforced to me why JAMS needs to be so interdisciplinary. They're very diverse resource recommendations, but they're mostly arts and humanities. No overlap. I'm crying. My life is difficult. And there is no correct way to start jumping into anime and manga studies. So I know it will feel really overwhelming when you decide to jump into this research. There isn't a right way to start. The only correct way to start is just to dive headfirst in and experience it. These are my recommended resources for anime and manga studies. Feel free to take a photo of this. I can come back to it during the Q&A if we have time. JAMS and Macademia, we're the only 2 journals that publish exclusively on this. JAMS is 100% open access. You can bulk download all of our articles, go nuts. Macademia does require a bit of a login, but most public libraries will actually subscribe to the databases that have Macademia in them. Or you can buy the actual books on Amazon. Frenchie designs all the covers. They're very, very pretty. Books I'd recommend: Anime's Identity by Stevie Swan is kind of core. I mentioned him at the start. These arguments about what really defines anime. This is a highly theoretical text that really dives into it. Raina Dennison's work, Anime: A Critical Introduction, a really strong place to start. It's a bit historical at this point, but still really good. A Media Theory of Animation by Thomas Lamar, Ian Condry's The Soul of Anime, Christopher Bolton's Interpreting Anime, Frenchie's book, Cosplay: Fictional Modes of Existence. If you like to cosplay, Frenchie is a really powerful fashion scholar, and she dives into a lot of this stuff in a really cool way. Anime History by Jonathan Clements, and then finally Susan Napier's book, who I quoted at the very beginning, Anime from Akira to Howl's Moving Castle. These are all wonderful. And the easiest one, and here is again that little map if you are interested. So now let's dive into why everybody goes to anime conventions. Let's talk about some lessons from lockdown on why do people actually jump into these types of cons. Why are we doing this? Why are we all hanging out here together? Well, as long as there's proper hygiene, the convention will be packed. And that is very true. I was watching this in our hotel room yesterday, Gary and I screenshotted this and added it in at the super last minute because it fits so well. So the Anime Cons and COVID survey, we had 1,000 plus people. We had roughly 1,400 con goers were surveyed during the 2020 lockdown. This was a partnership with Anime Expo, and so they shared all of this data. They shared the survey on their various social media, and that got a lot more cons to pick up this and share it, which was really exciting. So we're going to talk about a couple of common themes. And if you want to read this actual full complete paper, it is published in JAMS with the data set itself. So if you happen to be a data scientist or want to play around with the data, please take the data and play with it. That's why we published it fully open access. Oh my God, did you really? I'm so glad. Thank you for your service. So this is going to be very exciting. So brief intro. 359 individual cons were listed as attended across 29 countries. 49 of all 50 states were represented. Very sorry to Wyoming. Is anyone here from Wyoming? None of us. That's why I didn't take the survey. So out of all of the survey responses that we had around 1,200 valid responses. This means these people filled out every single question. We had 200 additional survey respondents that just didn't answer every question, so we can still put that data in, but it would have skewed things, so they're shaved out for now. Most of them in the United States. Most people that answered the survey were at the time between 25 and 34. The second highest were between 18 to 24. Our lowest, 0.3%, were 65 or above. Those are some very interesting points of data if you want to poke around. They're very fun to see those responses. So the top states represented. California, 511 people responded from California. Extremely exciting. Texas, you see that number drop. New York, Minnesota, Illinois, Florida, and Maryland, and Massachusetts, Wisconsin, New Jersey. And then the amount of cons recommended, of course, the highest number was Anime Expo, because Anime Expo shared it directly on their Twitter account. And so, of course, most of the respondents are from there, but you weren't limited to choosing one convention. It was just how many conventions do you attend, and please list all of them. And so that is the high number that we got, which was really exciting. Some very unique interventions. So Cohen, Parker, and Wu, in discussing the disaster platformization of cons, consulted with the shock of the pandemic. Under-researched conventions organizers turned to extant digital platforms to connect exhibitors, vendors, guests, and attendees. But Comic-Cons already acted like platforms. So essentially what Cohen, Parker, Wu argue are, it's simple to put cons into a digital space, or it is at least doable to put cons into a digital space, because you can almost recreate everything that happens at a con in the digital space. I vehemently disagreed with this. I thought that cons really need a physical element to them, and so I think that this data collection ideally engages with that. Then Ed Hoff, who talked about the spike of cosplay videos during the COVID-19 lockdowns, and cosplayers invented new collaborative challenges in order to show off the cosplay that they were still making while being unable to attend anime conventions and show them off. So these are two very, very cool papers. But we asked a couple of questions, and these are the ones that I want to highlight today. How do you usually participate at anime conventions? What do you usually do? Has the availability of conventions affected your social life or normal routines in any way? And have you attempted to recreate the convention experience at all? And if so, how? And the results I thought were really shocking. So how do you participate at conventions? 87% of respondents said that they go to people watch. I want to show up and I want to look around. I want to see what everybody's doing. I want to see what everybody's wearing, which is very, very classic. 86% said I browse the artist alley, and then slightly lower said I browse the dealer's room, if the two are separate. I spoke to a few vendors that attempted to do these things during the lockdowns and everything was virtual, and all of them universally were like, it was the worst experience I've ever had. When you walk by a booth, you might browse, you might do things, but if you enter a Zoom room and it's just you and a salesperson, people usually quickly leave the Zoom room because it's too awkward and it's too stressful. So has the availability of cons during COVID-19 affected your social life in any way? 69, nice, overall respondents reported that the lack of cons affected their social life to some degree. 34% said somewhat, and 35% said noticeably. So I think from this data, we're able to tell that a lot of Anime Con attendees, this is a really important part of our year. This is where I see a lot of my friends who might not live in this part of the country. This is something I've been working toward. Maybe I've been building a cosplay. Maybe I've been planning out the panel rooms. Maybe I want to do all these social things here. Or maybe it's just a way for me to meet new people. But roughly 70% of respondents said, I go to cons because they help my social life. They help my mental health. They help me meet new people and get out of my own bubble. And so I was very, very struck down tragic during COVID when everything was fully locked. And have you attempted to recreate the convention experience in any way? This included attending virtual conventions like CasaCon or meeting with cosplay friends that maybe you don't see in other parts of the country. And most people said no. Most people said I didn't do that. I was just sad inside my house. And I'm like, me too, brother. I've been feeling that. 63% reported they did not attend any virtual conventions. 77% said they in no way tried to recreate the con experience. And 72% answered that they did cosplay, but people that I'd self-identified as cosplayers, only 37% of them stated that they were actively cosplaying during the COVID-19 pandemic. Me dressed as Seto Kaiba sitting in my sad apartment in Georgia. Like this was a rough time. So the big argument, can con space be replaced? No, I don't think so. I think that cons are one of the most unique physical spaces that we have in fandom. I think that so much of fandom can exist virtually, but I think the convention space itself and the electricity and the energy, it's almost impossible to recreate the full and complete experience of this. Roughly 90% of what people do at cons, between people watching and browsing into additional alleys, it's much harder to do online. Anime conventions have a massive effect on the social lives of those who attend them, and most anime convention attendees don't try to recreate being at a con outside of a con. So now we're going to talk about Germany. Oh no, wait, no, not this, not this. I'm so, everyone close your eyes. I can't, how could I bring up Italia during this time? How could this happen to me? I cosplayed France for several years. I was a teenager in my defense. I was a teenage boy in my defense. When I say I was a booth babe, it feels like I'm going, I was a courtesan for several years. I wasn't always a balding 32-year-old man. It is. So let's talk about researching in Germany, the Japanese Visual Media Studies graph. So the Japanese Visual Media Studies graph is created and run by Stuttgart Media University in Stuttgart, Germany. So this project aims to create a research database on Japanese visual media, including but not limited to anime, manga, computer games, visual novels. It is aimed at researchers of Japanese studies who focus on modern media and its expressions, themes, topics, characters, and receptions. We envision a graph-based, highly interconnected database structure similar to the Google Knowledge Graph that is combined with a flexible search interface. So this is a project that is funded by the German government, of all things. The German government is very interested in your appreciation of anime. Because anime is a multi-billion-dollar industry all around the world, it makes sense for us to be examining this on such a high cultural level. And so they did a tiny use case project back in November of 2025, so very, very recently. 12 scholars from all around the world were flown in. I was the American anime representative. A lot of pressure. Whole lot of pressure on me to do a tiny use case. So we were all flown to Germany literally only for 2 days just to poke around the data set. What is in here? Is this information valid? How can we dig into this when we basically have 4 hours a day over 4 days, with the last hour on that second day being a presentation by all of us? So this is the tiny use case for that. Welcome to the most statistical anime monster. This is science. This is data. I have a master's degree. So this is the most statistically typical anime monster. So the research goals in this giant data set, there is an actual fan-created data set. If you know like animecharacters.com, you can type in your birthday. They partnered with the German government. I love saying sentences that have never been said before, ever in the history of time. And they gave over all of their fan-logged data. And so included in that fan tag, I was interested in things tagged as vampire, demon, and ghost. I wanted to see in this anime character database, what they do is they list people out by actual age, perceived gender, hair color, and some of them, if they are a monster, are tagged with the tag monster. And in addition to that tag, if they are something that falls under monster, they're also tagged as that. So these are the tags for the most typical traits across vampire, demon, and ghost. I was really, really interested to see over time if these things changed. What are the gender differences between these monsters? And so here is that tiny use case brought in. So some challenges and some interesting pieces. The data set included things like hair color, eye color, age, sex, and role. Role meant, are they the protagonist? Are they the antagonist? But because this is all a fan data set, sometimes things were only tagged as main character or side character, which is a different tag than protagonist. So do I merge these tags? What do I do? Things got very confusing, but oftentimes fan tags were overly unique. So out of 283 characters tagged as vampire, only 151 had a role like protagonist or antagonist described to them. Alongside this, there were a number of user-generated tags. This included things like freckle, or maid, or wearing jeans. Show me the Google, show me the jeans vampire. Show me the cool skateboard boy, which I found really, really fun. And 82 of those 228 tags only appeared once per character. So that is a huge number to knock off, but it made this data set extremely fun to play around with. So let's talk about ghosts. What's the most typical anime ghost? Does anybody want to guess? What's the most typical anime ghost? What's their hair color? What's their eye color? What's their gender? White? Also what I assumed. I thought this character is gonna have white hair, or this is gonna be an Onryo. This is going to have long black hair. Spooky. Okay, I get it. Wrong. Crazy. 140 characters were tagged as ghost. 102 of those 140 were female. If you're an anime ghost, you're likely a girl. Good for you. We're all dead. It doesn't matter. So, 23 were tagged as male. 1 was tagged as ambiguous. And others, like Ghost Shroud, who is a haunted sheet from Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle. A very fun anime about a princess that's just trying to go to bed. It was very fun looking through all of these tags because that obviously the sheet ghost has no tags associated with it aside from ghost and sheet. And so the data got really messy really fast, but was really, really fun to play with. So the most typical anime and visual novel ghost, 61% of the anime ghosts were teenage girls. Teenage girls in anime, watch out. There's a lot of isekai trucks out there from what I've learned. 18% of these teenage girl ghosts had blue hair, and that was the most common anime girl hair type for ghosts. So the most typical anime ghost looks like this, actually. Crazy. We're all confused. Not what I thought was going to happen, but the most typical, statistically accurate anime girl ghost looks like that, and that. So from 7 Days with You, the most precious memory of our lives, these are the ghosts. Welcome. Not what I thought was going to happen. Very, very confusing. Things did not get better with demons. Anime demons had a much more even gender split, however. 179 were female and 171 were male. Equal opportunity hell. Equal opportunity evil and darkness. 23% of male demons were antagonists. This was the highest tag. And 37% of female demons were supporting cast. So if you are a male ghost, if you are a male demon, you are the bad guy. If you are a girl demon, you are somewhere in the background hanging out, vibing, having a nice meal. So the most typical demons. The most typical female demon was a teenage girl with blonde hair. Yeah, pretty understandable. So, Ix Isabella from Welcome to the Demon School, Iruma-kun. Most anime girl demons look like that. Jump scare warning. The most typical anime male demon was just a grown man with black hair. Just a fully grown man. So Azazel from Supernatural, the animation, jump scare. That's what, big difference here. Kind of different vibes going on between these two. Very, very fun. And now my favorite, vampires. How I got my start in higher education. My first ever academic presentation was a cross-tabbed analysis between Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Twilight. And that was my first ever academic talk, and I was like, boy, I'm addicted to this. So, and again, another very similar gender split, 137 female versus 145 male. 59% of male vampires were adults. So if you are a grown man, be careful. You could be a vampire at any point. And 49% of female vampires were teenagers. So we're seeing this sort of continuation of, if you are a male anime character, you're probably a grown man. If you are a girl anime monster, you are probably a teen. Female vampires were more likely to be the main character of their series. They were more likely to be the protagonist or the person who was leading the stories. Male vampires were most likely to be the antagonist of their series. So we're seeing, again, some interesting overlap of this gendering of protagonist versus antagonist across these anime monsters. So of the 29 vampire antagonists, 22 were male. So the vast majority of the vampire bad guys were boys. The most common vampire fan tag was pointy ears. Great, you'll love to see it. What interesting and valuable data for the wonderful people looking at this data set. Here is a very weird visualization of this, but you can sort of see across these, we are seeing men with black hair and blonde women between the two types of characters. And then everybody else is kind of just hanging out in between, and those teenagers versus the grown men. We also have, just in terms of their eye color, So we can see red eyes and red eyes are both very, very common vampire signatures. So you can probably tell if you're walking around, anybody around the con, red eyes, just be on alert. Keep your blood inside you. Keep your blood inside you for the rest of this con. So the most typical anime vampires, can I get a drum roll, please? The most typical male vampire is an adult antagonist with red eyes and black hair. That would be Alucard from Hellsing. That's our boy, the most common vampire. Another one would be Dracula from Castlevania. We can see these are very, very classic anime vampires. We also have our female vampires. This is likely a teenage main character with red eyes and blonde hair. So that would be Yue from Commonplace to World's Strongest, but you could also think of Police Girl from Hellsing. Extremely fun stuff. I was also very interested in the genre that had these tags involved. So any genre piece that included monster as a term. I anticipated that so there were overall 583 anime movies across this data set. I included movies because it included stuff like Vampire Hunter D, which is an anime, but it's technically a movie, and so they both end up coming together in this data set. But not every anime had a genre tag, again, because this is a fan data set that is contributed to by fans and what they think is valuable when you are searching something. So the majority of media had multiple tags. So supernatural, vampire, comedy, and shonen is just one set of tags for one specific anime. And data was exploded out every 5 years, meaning I compiled all of the data and then blew it up over 5-year terms to separate all of these different tags out. Aside from 1982 to 1999, because only 29 anime were mentioned within these years. So, genre through the decades, 82 to 99. If you have a monster, you're probably in a comedy. Interesting, not what I thought. Second highest was action. 2000 to 2005, again, comedy is our highest, and then tied action, fantasy, and adventure at 10%. Comedy again from 06 to 2010, even higher this time. And then finally, we're seeing the introduction of the supernatural tag. You're just watching something vaguely spooky. Comedy again from 11 to 15, followed by fantasy and supernatural. Fantasy and supernatural finally dominate over comedy in 16 to 2020, only for comedy to immediately come back from 2021 to 2023 at 17%. So I was really excited to see this level of genre trend. We can really see that these numbers are so diverse across all of them, but if you have a monster, you're probably telling a goofy story. You're probably telling something fun, something strange, and something interesting. And so that brings us to the end of my presentation. I will give you, thank you. But that just means that I powered through this. I was very, very worried, and I tried to talk very, very fast and not tell too many stories. So we have time for people that have questions. We have 13 minutes exactly if folks have any questions. That's my name. That is, I am with Indiana University in the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies, and that is my email, which Javon reached out to. So if you want to bring me to any conventions, I'm very down. I love talking. I see 2 hands raised up here. Yeah.
So I actually work in academia too.
Hello.
I work at Notre Dame, Maryland University here. But I've actually used JAMS for some academic research I'm in a grad program as well, one for his job. So I've been using that actually for some of my stuff related to social media.
Thank you.
So I'm very happy you're here. And you are getting used, and it is actually in our academic database for people in our library to look up.
I'm thrilled. That's fantastic.
Being used
I'm happy to see it. We have actually, JAMS has experienced a huge boom in our views and our downloads over the past 2 years. So now every single month, month over month, we're getting 5,000, 10,000 views across JAMS site, which I think is very, very cool for a niche academic journal.
But you are getting used. I don't know what our rate is looking up, but I use it for my own classwork related things because I'm in a communications-based program.
Thank you.
Data set looking at social media usage and marketing stuff.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to hear it.
Yeah. But I also am an academic with doing anime and manga stuff. I studied at Kansai Gaidai with an undergrad.
Wow.
I did a lot of different classes
Wow.
anime pilgrimage stuff. So I
Yes.
had a lot of first-hand experience doing that about 12 years ago.
Ah.
But seeing it now in this big of a landscape is like makes my heart so like warm and fuzzy because like I literally was doing stuff for a class assignment. Like I had to go to a Dojin event and I had to count how many blues were and if anyone sold out. And
Wow.
data that the professor wanted. So.
Very exciting. Thank you. Yes, my friend with the glasses.
Sorry, I have like a very much less interesting thing to add.
No, not less interesting. This is all fun.
Yeah, I guess it is the most interesting. What's your two favorite anime?
Oh my God. Okay. Oh well, I also promised I'll take if people want my email, it's right there. But these are all of the studies that I referenced. So if you want to read the academic articles themselves, please snap that and I'll leave it up. My personal favorite anime, my classic favorite anime is Cowboy Bebop. It's so good. It's extremely fun. My mid-cut favorite anime is Life Lessons with Uramichi Onisan. Yes, for those that don't know it, it's about a bunch of mid-30s children's entertainers. And it's so funny. It's so good. It's on Crunchyroll, and I rewatch it all the time. And my recent favorite is Migi and Dolly, which is a murder mystery parody anime about two identical twins pretending to be one another. Great, weird, wild. It's by the same mangaka who did Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto? So it's very camp. It's very fun. So those are always, I'll be in Indianapolis monthly this month, like our monthly newsletter. And the guy interviewing me was like, oh yeah, and what anime do you like? And I said Cowboy Bebop. He's like, I have read a lot of Frankenfran. You can tell me anything. I'm like, you're a horrible person. Yes, I can. Yes, I certainly can. You should go to jail. You should. So those are my favorite anime. Thank you for asking. My friend with the purple hair.
I also wanted to mention that your jams is used by other students. I'm an undergrad communication student, and I actually did stumble upon it for 2 different papers I did for 2 different classes.
Oh my goodness.
So one of the things I actually wanted to ask is, what do you think one of the hardest parts of doing research in anime as it pertains to like fandom of it is? Because one of the things I ran into was my very first paper in like the field at all was for communications research, and I decided I was going to be like, let's do a field survey, and got 30 responses.
Yay.
At least 25.
That's, I think, still very good. I think the toughest thing, and one thing, so one of our, or one of our earliest, most heavily downloaded papers, our top paper right now is a generalized survey of the isekai genre, and that's by Dr. Paul Price, who actually worked for the Environmental Protection Agency and is now just retired and loves anime and loves data. And he was like, I made a data set of 20,000 isekai just to see how to compare all of these different things. What's the protagonist like? What are we doing all of these? I'm like, yeah, I'm very interested in that data set, Paul. That's crazy. And also, who are you and how'd you get into my house? But it's very much, but we published a paper on the history of anime fandom in Saudi Arabia. So that, it's a really interesting paper. It goes over a very fun history. And it was originally pitched, as like a survey paper. So the author was like, I interviewed 15 people at an anime convention. I can now speak for all of the anime fans in the Middle East. No, you can't. No, you can't. And so we published that paper as a history of the fandom, and then she included the paper as sort of like a preliminary study. This is what you could ask people. This is how you could engage with people. Whenever you're doing sort of a numbers-based fan survey, a lot of fan studies work. So Transformative Works and Cultures would be another really good journal for you to jump into. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's very fun. It's also open access. But it's very common across fan studies to do something what's referred to as an autoethnography. So you write as a fan of the piece. I don't accept them into jams because I think there's too many of them. And because I come from the con background, so I'm like, I think you need more folks. Whenever you're doing a survey, I think the biggest thing to note and to argue is your limitations. And that should be sort of the core opener of, I interviewed this many people during this event. from these dates at this time. And so there are all sorts of ways to take that data and make arguments. So if we were to survey everybody in this room, we could have a very interesting and unique data set response of anime fans inside of MAGFest as a preliminary study. And then from there, you could try to publish that data. I think there's maybe 40 people in this room, probably less. You could try to publish that data, and then in seeing those things, you could try to connect with MAGFest. You could try to connect to the convention and say, can you put this out on your social media? Or would I be allowed to do surveying throughout the whole con? So when it comes to getting people to take the survey, what's really tough in fan studies is everybody has to opt in. You need people that are interested. The boon is anime fans love to give their opinions. Anime fans love to give their opinions. And so what you can do to strengthen your data is to utilize public social media. So if you're interested in Demon Slayer fans present at MAGFest that go to these particular panels, this might be something better to do at an anime-focused con, but we'll use this con as an example. So from there, you could interview those people, and it would be better to have more qualitative responses. So not just filling out the survey, but asking each person questions on why are you interested? Why are you interested in this? Why is this happening? Really digging into some of the meat of that, and that will help shore things up. And then to add in additional posts on social media that kind of give a temperature check on the overarching fandom. So, we're looking on Tumblr, we're looking on Reddit, we're looking on Twitter or X or Blue Sky, and seeing what are people talking about Demon Slayer talking about. The ethical way to do that always is to anonymize everybody's names, but these are things that are in public posts. And if you want to publish them, the ethical thing to do is to reach out to that Twitter user and ask them, I would like to put your tweet into my paper. And sometimes they enthusiastically say yes, because they're like, I have very strong opinions about Demon Slayer. And sometimes they say no. But I would say in any way of researching anime, you're always going to want to move laterally. So a lot of folks, when they're researching anime, start by just searching the anime itself. So sort of, I want to read papers about Cowboy Bebop. There's not a lot of them, because the history of anime studies is, it was really, really heavily frowned upon to research popular culture. And then over time, it became much more acceptable to write about comics, but only about American comics. Don't do anything outside of the United States. And now we're kind of finally in a zone where, oh my God, anime is booming. Let's actually look at anime. But so a lot of the papers that are out there, unless they're in macadamia, they might be in a teeny tiny niche journal, and the place that they talk about anime is barely a paragraph. So always, always, always be on the lookout for things that talk about how you're analyzing the media. So if you're looking at anti-capitalist messaging in Cowboy Bebop, you don't only want to look at Cowboy Bebop. Yes, you did inspire that. Thank you. You don't only want to look at Cowboy Bebop. You want to be looking at generalized theories of these representations across media, or specifically in Japanese media if you want to go deeper, and then finally start looking at the anime. The bulk of what you're going to be doing as an anime scholar is putting things out there from your own close reading of the anime itself, and then supporting that with all of this other research that relates to it. So whether you're doing, heavily fan studies related communications research, you're interviewing people, or you're doing a much more theoretical take, always, always, always just have a lot more research than you need. Have other stuff present, because if you only are looking for Cowboy Bebop, you're not going to find anything. Does that help? Oh, I'm very glad. Do we have other questions? Do we have time for other questions? Oh my God, we're fine. Oh, we're all good. Yes, my friend here.
So with this being like a gaming-focused convention,
Yeah.
more intersect of anime-inspired games like whatever, like Musume games or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you see like room for intersection between those two like communities here with this kind of research?
I think it's really exciting. I think we're already seeing the overflow and the especially heavy overlap between these two. Emily Wagner, who was our keynote, who I put a photo of in the Y anime section, there are a ton of Umamazume Derby cosplayers that are going to the Broncos games out in Colorado. dressed as the horses because that's the horse team. Those are my girls out there, and I have to support them. And the Broncos have gotten so into it that now if you go to the games, there's a ton of Uemasu Pretty Derby cosplayers running around the Broncos game because they're like, horses are playing. Wear horses. Go horses. So I think we're seeing a ton more anime and anime-inspired pieces come out, which is really, really exciting to see. So I was very happy to come here to MAGFest. I've never spoken at a games-focused convention before. So I think we're about to see a lot more overlap between the two. I think I had one more question in the middle. Yes.
So let's just say, like, for example, you know, like, I've read the Anime Machine, I've read Anime's Identity. I have an idea. I want to, like, pitch something to Jam. Like, how would that, like, work?
Yeah.
Since, like, you know, I didn't study this. I studied computer science.
Oh, there's a lot you can do in computer science. There's a ton of database research you could do. If you've read these theoretical pieces, they're really good. Jams is my baby. So I will say anybody can submit to Jams. Anyone, anywhere, all around the world. Jams has an 80% rejection rate, which feels crazy high for an anime journal, but I'm still very, very protective and very guarded because I remember when I first launched Jams, I was pitching it at the Popular Culture Association's national conference, and I pitched it to one of the publishers, and I said, I have an open access anime journal that I'm building, and I'm really looking for people to be involved. And she was like, well, what's it about? And I said, anime. And she doubled over laughing. Like, you're never going to get people. This is never going to be successful. No one does this type of work. And now we're on year 6. We have hundreds of thousands of downloads. It's really exciting. But the core of Jams is anyone can submit to Jams. We only accept fully completed works. And that came about because I get a lot of manifestos. I get a lot of people who are like, I have theories. I'm like, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Yes, but I'm like, you need sources. So there are guidelines on Jam's website. If you Google Journal of Anime and Manga Studies, we are the first thing that comes up. And under our authors guidelines sections, it states the exact number of words that we look for. It states our exact citation guidelines and gives examples. So anyone, if you are inspired, we have published people outside of higher education. We have published purely fan scholars. We publish a lot of first-year PhD students. We publish a lot of people where this is their first publication in Jams, including our second most popular paper by Zoe Crombie, who ran the Lancaster Anime Conference this year. So there are actually 3 academic conferences about anime, and Jams was her first publication, and now she's a full professor in Lancaster. So I'm very, very emotional about that. Yeah, and I think we're out of time. Thank you all so much for coming.